My name is Megan and I'm at the Hobart Branch Library. Today I'm going to read a chapter from the book Don't Judge Me by Lisa Schroeder, and it is published by Scholastic Press, New York. The story is about a girl named Hazel who is shy, introverted, doesn't like to make waves, and she's in middle school. One day, a list of girls' names with how they're rated by appearance goes around the school. Hazel decides she needs to make this stop and make waves. So, I'm going to read the first chapter to you. It's just called Chapter 1, and we're going to get started. Sometimes I like to imagine what it must be like to have a large family at dinner time. Probably a little chaotic, loud, maybe messy, but I bet if there are school forms to sign, the parents hardly read them, or if one of the kids doesn't feel like talking, no one even notices. That must be nice. Since it's just the three of us in my family, my parents always notice if I don't feel like talking. Some days it feels like a giant sign with neon lights flashing at me. Talk to us, Hazel. Tell us all your thoughts and feelings. The lights were about to start flashing at me across our Friday night dinner table at Ruby's Diner. It's a favorite place of ours, with booths covered in old-fashioned red vinyl and a counter with round stools where people sit and drink thick, creamy milkshakes. I love strawberry the most because they use real berries. The waitresses wear pink dresses with aprons, while the men wear black pants, white shirts, and pink bow ties. As my dad likes to say, it's very retro. I brought a book along with me to read because I much prefer reading to talking. I was finishing up an old favorite, The Adventures of Pippi Longstocking. It's always been my comfort book since starting middle school. I've really needed some comfort. I discovered Pippi when I was little thanks to a statue of her that stands in the park in front of our city's library. When Mom told me about Pippi, I'd wanted her to find the book and read it to me. So she had, and I fell madly in love with the girl named Pippi Longstocking. Pippi doesn't care what anyone thinks, and she's so unique. She loves to sail the 7 seas. She wears her 2 braids in such a way that they stick straight out from her head, and she can lift a horse with one hand. For my birthday that year, Mom got me my own set of Pippi Longstocking books. It's hard to know how many times I've read the original book, but if I had to guess, I'd say about 30. While I read my book, my parents talked about some problems Dad was having with a coworker. But once our food came and I set the book down, the questions would start. They always did. And I needed to show them something that was probably going to infuriate them, especially my mom. I brought it with me because chances were good Mom wouldn't make a scene in public place. The waiter gave us our food, and as soon as he left, I picked up a burger and took a bite. I was starving, but the texture was all wrong. I forced myself to swallow, set it down, and took a long drink of water. My face must have shown it, the disgust. Hazel, are you okay? Mom asked. She ordered her usual soup and salad. Meanwhile, Dad worked on his bacon cheeseburger like he hadn't eaten in 5 days. It's not well done, I said. I don't know if I can eat it. Dad wiped his mouth with his napkin. Then let's send it back. No, I whispered. That's so embarrassing. I picked up one of the crinkle fries that came with it. I'll just eat the fries, it's fine. Sweetie, Mom said with her warm smile. He asked how you wanted it, and you said, well done. If they didn't give you what you want, it's okay to ask them to make it right. Sometimes I wonder if becoming an adult gives you superpowers, one of them being the ability to do most anything and not get embarrassed by it. Well, unless you're Pippi Longstocking. Something magical must have happened to her as a baby. That's my guess. But take my dad, for example. He has no problem taking out the trash wearing his robe if he'd forgotten to do it the night before. Really, Dad? You're okay with the entire neighborhood seeing your old ratty green robe you've had for at least 100 years? And then there's Mom. Nothing phases her. Last weekend, we drove down to Salem and went to Macy's. As we browsed a rack of sale shoes, she burst out laughing. What? I asked. What is it? She pointed to the shoes she'd worn. I was in such a hurry, I didn't pay attention to what I was doing. Look, I'm wearing 2 different shoes. They were the same style, but one was black while the other was navy blue. She works at a coffee shop, which means she's on her feet all day. When she finds a comfortable pair of shoes that she loves, she often gets multiple pairs in different colors. Seems boring to me, but whatever. Another superpower adults seem to have is boring. And boring doesn't bother them at all. Well, hurry, I'd whisper. Buy some new ones. But put them on before anyone sees. But I'm not really finding anything I like. And besides, hardly anyone will notice. And if they do, well, I bet every woman in here has been so exhausted or rushed at some point, they've done the same thing. I couldn't believe it. She was okay with walking around with 2 different shoes on her feet in public? Can I go look at the teen section, I asked. Yes, I admit it. I didn't want to be seen with her. All right. I need to stop by the cosmetic counter. I'll be there in 10 minutes or so. Stay alert. Be safe. Her favorite 4 words make me sigh every time she says them. Now, before I could stop her, Mom had waved down the waiter. I stared at my glass of water like it provided all the answers to the universe, if only. I'm so sorry, the waiter said. It must have gotten mixed up with someone else's. I'll have the cook make you another one right away. Thank you, my dad said, while I muttered, sorry. Oh, nothing to be sorry about, the waiter said. We want you to be happy. I wanted to say, I'm in 6th grade. Do you remember what that was like? Happiness seems about as hard to find these days as a lost sock that magically disappeared in the laundry. So, how was school today? Mom asked. I'd been in middle school for about a month. At first, I told them how much I hated being in a big school and having passing time for classes. I longed for the familiar faces at my old school and the rooms I'd come to know and love. Mom kept telling me that getting used to something new can be hard at first, but things would get better. It didn't take long to realize that telling them about my problems only made things worse, because then they felt like they needed to ask about every little thing, and I just didn't want to talk to them about it. Instead, I write haiku. Strange, I know, but it helps. My 5th grade teacher, Miss Lennon, got me started. She shared one almost every day on the whiteboard last year. I kind of became obsessed and started coming up with my own. My brain loves counting syllables, apparently, and when something good comes to me, I try to write it down. Since I'd been eating lunch in the library, I like to write them on little pieces of paper and slip them into books for others to find. Like this one I'd written earlier today. 3 years of this, but others have survived, and so will I, hopefully. For a moment, I thought about reciting it as my answer to her question, but instead, I turned to my mom, smiled, and replied, Fine. Learn anything interesting? Dad asked. I knew they didn't like it when I answered with just one word, but did they understand I didn't like it when they asked about school every single day? Because honestly, they might have thought they'd love to know what it's like for me to be in middle school, but did they really? I mean, did they really want to know there were a couple boys who insisted on tripping my best friend Tori and me every day as we made our way to first period? Did they really want to know I'd asked for permission to eat in the library because kids in the cafeteria were so obnoxious? Sometimes I could hardly stand it. Did they really want to know that in band class I kept finding a note on my music stand with some horrible comment about my butt? As much as I didn't want to show them, I knew I had to. And this was my chance. I pulled out the piece of paper out of my pocket of my jeans, unfolded it, and placed it in the middle of the table for them to read. "Yeah, this happened today," I whispered. "And Mom, please, keep your voice down, okay?" And then I held my breath, hoping she'd grant me my wish. So that was chapter 1. It sounds like a very interesting story, and if you guys are interested in reading it, it is called Don't Judge Me by Lisa Schroeder. You can pick up a copy at the library. Thanks for joining. Bye, guys.